Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Selma Avdic, and on behalf of the American Marketing Association, I want to welcome everyone to our webcast, which is sponsored by Infor, entitled, Are You Talking to Me? 5 Tips to Create a Tailored Customer Journey. So before we start, I just wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. This webcast is being recorded and will be made available to you soon. We also encourage everyone to continue the conversation on Twitter by referencing or searching for hashtag #MyCustomerJourney. And if you have any technical questions today, please feel free to ask them at any time by using the chat box on the left-hand side of your screen. And so with that, I'm very happy to introduce our 2 speakers for today. We have Chip Coyle, who is the Chief Marketing Officer with Infor. And in his current position, Chip is responsible for Infor's global marketing, which includes branding, online services, corporate communications, and customer programs and events. And we also have Lisa Nirell, who's the Chief Energy Officer, EnergizeGrowth. And Lisa is also the founder of Marketing Leaders of DC and Atlanta. And she is hired by companies such as Infor, Adobe, Gannett, and Hilton to gain fresh insights and launch breakthrough marketing ideas. So with that, I am very happy to turn things over to Lisa to get us started.
Selma, good morning and thank you. You know, people say that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with 1 step. Actually, that was Lao Tzu, the Chinese philosopher. Today we're going to cover a lot of information to help all of you take the first step towards understanding and optimizing your customer's experience within your organization. So never fear, the replay will certainly be available afterwards if you miss any key points. Also know that Chip and I are excited because some of the things that you're about to hear are contrary to what you've learned elsewhere about the customer journey and the customer experience. So as we go through this, feel free to share your comments or questions using the hashtag #MyCustomerJourney. Now let's look at today's agenda. We're going to talk about customer journey, both the 3 areas of the good customer journeys, the bad customer journeys, and yes, the ugly customer journeys. We're also going to discuss why having personalized strategies for your prospects and customers is not enough anymore. We're also going to look at what your customers and community members are experiencing today through what we call the message maelstrom, and why you need to understand it and walk in their shoes. And then finally, Chip is going to provide you with 5 tips to make the customer journey meaningful and powerful, not only for your organization, but for the customer's experience. So with that, let's dive right in. Good morning, Chip.
Hey, good morning, Lisa.
Chip, go ahead and define for us what a customer journey is and how it affects the customer experience.
Great. Yeah, and good morning, everyone. So, you know, by definition, the customer journey marks the variety of touch points in which the customer moves from an initial engagement all the way through ultimately becoming a loyal customer. And these touch points can be across really any channel, online or offline. So if you take a look at the 2015 State of the B2B Marketing Report on the next chart, you know, 86% of senior level marketers say it's absolutely critical or very important to create a cohesive customer journey.
That's a significant percentage.
It's, you know, obviously a hot topic today for us. There's a lot of marketing webinars like this about it. Marketing executives are looking to better marry up their marketing strategy with the customer journey, and that means looking at their entire marketing strategy more through the lens of the customer experience. And message alignment is absolutely critical.
there's quite a bit of research available out there, particularly in the last couple of years, about why the customer journey matters. What other things are you observing or studies are you hearing about?
Right. So I think if you advance to the next slide and the next one from there, what studies are showing is that the customer journey analysis is now the most valuable conversion rate optimization method, now taking the leadership over A and B testing, which has now dropped to second. A/B testing and iteration around that is still very important, but analyzing your entire customer journey is the most valuable way to produce new buyers and retain customers.
It's really come into its own. I mean, I remember attending my first customer experience conference about 6 years ago, and it was still kind of underground, but not anymore.
Right. And it's also clear that integrated customer journeys provide a definite competitive advantage, and in some cases, doubling sales year over year, according to a lot of case studies. There's one example that the Harvard Business Review did where they cited Oakland-based Sungevity. They're a residential solar business, and Sungevity has iterated to create a seamless customer journey, and since implementing their program, sales have doubled in the last year to more than $65 million, and they've exceeded their growth targets, making them the fastest growing player in their business of residential solar.
That's pretty impressive, and I think we've got plenty of examples here that you've laid out of research that shows it's more important than ever before. And seeing here looks like we have several hundred people participating in this webinar today. I would love to hear from all of you and hear about how you view your customer journeys today. So this is called the interactive part of our session today. If we can advance to our poll, we'd like to know from you, and please be as honest as possible when you give yourselves a score here. Tell us your current situation to answer to this question. My organization has documented the customer journey for our key offerings for optimal customer experience. So would you say that you've done that very poorly, or would you give yourselves an excellent or somewhere in between? So go ahead and let's hear from you now. Chip, the numbers are coming in quickly.
Wow, look at that.
Whoa. Very interesting. These polls are always fun. This is a much more interesting poll than some of the ones we're having right now in the United States for the elections. Let's see. Let's hold it open another 15 seconds.
Yeah, Lisa, let's not do a follow-on political polling question.
No, there'll be no, everyone can take a sigh of relief. We won't be discussing the elections at all on this webinar. Today's poll is telling us, let's see, Chip, interesting. So we've got a lot of room for growth and improvement from what I'm seeing here on the poll. So 40% of you have said that your customer journeys are documented in an average category. And if we start to add this up, only about 11.6% of you consider your documented customer journeys creating optimal customer experience from good to excellent. Oh, so we've got the 1%ers on the webinar here, the excellent people. Very, very interesting. We've got someone who just said, we're currently documenting our customer journey, Chip, and that's why I'm here. So it looks like Christine came to the right place today.
Fantastic, yeah. And hopefully we can add some insights with some real-world examples of how people are doing this throughout marketing in different types of B2B and B2C organizations.
Yeah, I think that's really great that we're looking at all of those particular industries, and we've got a number of examples. So Christine, you'll be able to draw from industries outside of your own. Speaking of which, Chip, talk to us about this chart.
Right. So here we have Forrester's 2016 Customer Experience Index scorecard, which looks across a number of different industries and how successfully companies are delivering customer experiences within those industries that help sustain loyalty. And you can expect that there's going to be higher scores in industries like retail and banking and hotels who have been leading the market with customer experience. Then you've got airlines where there's good and bad. At the bottom of the scale, you have good old government agencies, probably no surprise there. I think everyone can relate to this picture. We've all been there. This is a scene in the DMV, not traditionally a good customer experience, and they've been pretty much laggards when it comes to moving many of those interactions online. It's getting better, but not really a seamless and connected customer experience.
Yeah, maybe for those people participating from outside of the U.S., maybe their experience with the Department of Motor Vehicles is better. I'm not sure. But here in the United States, it has been consistently average or below average for the decades I've been driving anyway. So let's transition to some bad news, Chip, because as you know, it's easier to understand how to design great customer journey maps and experiences if we also understand the opposite, the bad news stories. Can you give us some examples where you've seen brands that have stumbled with navigating or understanding their customers' changing journey?
Yeah, let me start by saying that the ones here on the right are great companies. I love flying JetBlue. I do my banking at Bank of America. They both had instances of negative press, over the last couple of years that were pretty high profile. But let me just say, all companies, including mine, have crises and missteps that crop up along the way. But let me just focus on a few of these. I'll start with Bank of America, right? A couple of years ago, they wanted to streamline their customer service by setting up an autoresponder in Twitter, right, to acknowledge any of their mentions on Twitter. During the Occupy Wall Street, an activist was being chased away from the bank branch in New York by police in New York. And then he decided to tweet the pictures and mention @Bank of America, in his tweet. And then the bank was quick to reply to the mention, but it was unfortunately an autoresponder with the generic message, "Thank you for contacting us. How can we help?" And so that ended up kind of taking on a life of its own. That may be a good message, with a banking customer inquiry, but not an activist. And people picked up on that faux pas and just continued to retweet it and tweet out. And so it kind of created a little bit of a point-in-time crisis. The autoresponders just kept on coming, and it turned out to be kind of an embarrassment for their customer service staff. All fixed, and again, that was a couple years ago. JetBlue, right, in 2014 had a lot of flight cancellations due to weather, nothing new. But unfortunately, it didn't do a good job of putting the right communications in place and notifying the affected customers on its website. They got a ton of flack on social media from it, so not a great customer experience. If you go over, to Sports Authority, right? Everybody knows Sports Authority went out of business. They did not have a seamless customer experience in store and online. And a retail industry expert in an article about it was quoted as saying, "Someone who wants to shop in a brick-and-mortar store and try on the baseball glove or get a feel for a golf club wants a better shopping experience." That's not Sports Authority anymore. But there are other good examples in retail that have done a much better job with immersing the customer in the whole store experience, like Dick's or Golfsmith or Whole Foods, for example.
Yeah, That's a great example. I mean, Whole Foods has definitely pioneered that in the food arena with their, they have Wine Wednesdays and other events to help you sample the goods before you buy them. And their sales peak significantly during those events.
They're very forward thinking when it comes to that customer experience. And then Tower, right? Anyone as old as me remembers Tower Records. Went out of business several years ago. And another example of not really being able to adjust to the way consumers like to buy music in the age of the internet. And it just kind of seemed at the time like they weren't really paying attention to some of those new trends. So
and
yes, a summary of different examples.
And the hits just keep coming, Chip. We unfortunately like to joke a lot about the airlines because they've got issues like government regulation, weather conditions, and other things that work against them, and they take the hit for all of it. But what is this telling us?
This is another Forrester chart, and it shows the direct impact that revenue, the direct impact that customer experience has on revenue. Whether it's from a good or bad experience. You can see kind of the top end with leaders, the lower end with laggards, and it's a big difference, right? So CX is not just hype. It really, it affects, especially in industries where customers are free to switch businesses and competitors, switch over to competitors really easily. So that's why it's so key to deliver a differentiated customer experience.
And one of the things that you have to do in order to be a customer experience leader is we have to be able to step into the shoes of our customers and not only what they're experiencing but what they're feeling. And that's why I came up with this whole concept of the message maelstrom. What does this mean to you as a CMO, and what does this tell us about our customers these days?
Well, we all need to keep in mind that your target audiences are being inundated with messages and communications minute by minute, and it's really in both directions. It's two-way. And as you put it, it's a messaging maelstrom. It's a message maelstrom. So, how do you rise above the noise? That's the question. It's by making your messages as timely and as relevant as you possibly can. And engaging in branded customer communities is a goal with your customers, and keeping your conversations with them going even after the purchase.
And a lot of times we ignore that as marketers. A lot of marketing managers and directors are chartered with generating lots of demand and helping drive sales. But then what happens after the sale is just as equally important. And I also shared with you my little message maelstrom story a couple of weeks ago, Chip.
Company.
Yeah, the cable company. And I was on the phone with a tech support person, and he was troubleshooting my issue with our television. And we had lost service, and I said, hey, I'd like a partial credit. And the technician said they couldn't see my billing history. And he said, well, you'll have to call customer service tomorrow when they open at 9 a.m. I tell you, I was not pleased. And that whole mentality of it's not my department only makes this message maelstrom worse. So now that we've kind of painted the scene, we've talked about the importance of research, the research that's telling us the future of customer experience and the urgency around it, as well as what happens when you ignore customer journeys and experience. Let's talk about some tips and some things people can do to get on the customer journey path.
Yeah, so big data. Let's talk about the science of marketing, right? The big mistake that I see companies making right now is not centralizing and consolidating your data. It's a challenge for everybody. It's become trapped in different departmental silos and systems. And you need the right tools that can pull together all of the customer information from a variety of internal and external sources so that you have a full view, right? Lisa, you've talked about it as seeing a lack of alignment across departments.
Absolutely. We, in the communities of CMOs we work with across the U.S., we just finished our 4th annual CMO Innovation Trend Study. And not only face-to-face when I meet with CMOs, but also in our study of 102 CMOs, they said lack of alignment across departments is one of the top 3 barriers to their innovation success. So this is a big issue.
Yeah, so I think step 1 is making sure that you've got a handle on the various data sources and are pulling all that together. But then you need to turn that into information and the insights that will help you take action on your campaign. So if you look around the wheel here, let me point out a couple of things. You have machine learning. This is really the data science and the algorithms that mine your data and identify and find the patterns and trends that don't just explain the past performance, but actually recommend the optimal course of action going forward. Omni-channel architecture, that's designed to support all of the touch points, whether it's about responding to your customer at wherever they prefer to interact with you, or cycling the data from various activities back for further evaluation and analysis. Scalability, that's making sure your marketing data is based on a cloud architecture, which lets you in real time dynamically expand for heavier data loads and then contract during periods of lower use. And science adoption, that's adapting your data analytics and algorithms to all of your different targets and in the different industries that they may exist in. Finally, network visibility, right? So having better visibility, the easier it becomes to take network decisions and lower the expenditure that you have on bandwidth.
Yes, I like the science of marketing graph here, Chip. And at the same time, let's also recommend, and this is where we get a bit provocative compared to other discussions people may have participated in around customer journeys, we have to look at other ways to gather customer data as well, because social and marketing anthropologists tell us that more than 90% of communication today is nonverbal.
Yeah, for sure. You once mentioned to me, Lisa, that in the age of high tech, you can't forget high touch, and that has always stuck with me. And so what does that really mean, right? For one, it's important to observe your customers in their natural environment. How do they work? What are they doing? What are they producing? What are they selling? Attend customer trade shows and ask them questions during breaks and at meals. Observe your customers actually buying your products or services. Another thing is, team up with your chief customer officer if you have one, right? And we have one at Infor, and we're very tightly aligned, with her. So because you need to look at the full customer life cycle and all the interactions and touch points with your company beyond just the marketing interactions, and use data and the comments that come from customer satisfaction surveys. All of that should come into the mix when it comes to creating the personal experiences.
Most definitely, having that empathic view of your customer's life, even participating in what we call empathy interviews to find out what it's like when they buy your products or services, what problems they're trying to overcome. And becoming adept at conducting these kinds of interviews is a tremendous skill that I don't think will ever go out of date. So we've got some good advice here, Chip, on data gathering. Let's look at the next slide to see some examples of how to harness that data.
Yep, this is Lord Abbott. So data science can help sales and marketing teams predict next likely purchases. So Lord Abbott is a financial services company based in New Jersey. They sell mutual funds. They may recommend Growth Leaders Mutual Fund to a customer because they have previously purchased Multi-Asset Balanced Opportunity Fund. And what they did to be able to know what is that next likely thing to sell is they created a custom dashboard with contacts, past purchase information, and more importantly, a prediction engine that was based on what similar clients are buying now. Much like what Amazon does with consumer products at the bottom of their pages. And Lord Abbott's sales team know before they pick up the phone what a client is likely looking for, and then they use that to their advantage in the call to build that deeper relationship and engagement.
Yeah, boy, I wish every advisor had that capability, and it's just such an exciting area right now with huge growth potential. I was just reading The Economist, and the co-founder and CEO of Netflix, Reed Hastings, had a great aphorism. He said, "One day we hope to get so good at suggestions that we're able to show you exactly the right film or TV show for your mood when you turn on Netflix." So who knows what these analytics will be able to do for us to heighten our experience in 2 to 5 years.
It's definitely not guesswork. It's based on data science.
Most definitely, which brings us to tip number 1.
Think science before art, right. So use data science to make sense of the volume of data that's at your fingertips and to give you actionable insights to help you target and plan the right campaigns that are personal and help you build those relationships. And make sure you're incorporating predictive analytics that help anticipate what that next best choice is for your customers.
Yeah, that's an important tip. And as we look at some of the questions coming in, Chip, here's a question that is timed beautifully. Mike asks the question, how do you create a holistic view of your customers to extract explicit data? Tell us about that and what this slide might do to help answer that question.
Right. Well, there's a lot of tools out there. There's different tools that help you gain the 360-degree view of the customer from a variety of sources. We at Infor have, as part of our whole marketing suite, things like sales intelligence engines, which do these predictive analytics mostly for B2C types of companies. So there's a variety of tools out there. We can summarize some of that in a little bit.
Great, great. And Mike, thanks for that question. Let's look also at some other examples, Chip. Can you share, for example, more around making the journey personal and where you've seen that?
Yeah, you bet. So a lot of people ask, okay, so what's the difference between personalized and personal? And well, here's the basic difference. Personalized would be saying, "Hello, Mary," and then followed by the same message that you send to the entire audience. Personal is, "Hello, Mary, we understand that you're interested in this particular thing, and let us tell you a little bit more about that." So when you deliver a personal message, you immediately become more credible, and it's not lost in the traditional marketing noise. One way to do that is by building dynamic customer profiles at the center of this diagram. It's one way to get to know your customer better through social channels. You can find out things on through LinkedIn and other sources like, do you have a college in common? Do you have a favorite sports team that you like? Or what is your latest news that you reposted? What are your general interests? And all of those things can help enhance that personal dialogue that you have with them.
Yes, and I also think this works well on the heels of the whole movement around social selling that started to evolve about 2 years ago. It's really looking across the whole universe of sources to understand how your customers act and what they love and so on. And you've seen a company do that quite well, so tell us on the next slide more about Turkcell.
Yep, here's another example. Turkcell, for those of you who don't know, because I didn't know, is a leading mobile phone operator in Turkey. They've got 34 million subscribers, and they use an interaction advisor tool to deliver real-time personal content that's in the context of its specific customers. And so that really does give them that single view of a customer that was just asked about. So
that's great.
They've got 3,500 reps that get the right information at the right time and are able to make relevant and personal offers, based on historical and predictive data. And what impact did it have, right? In 5 years, their subscribership increased by 22% a year, and their revenue has risen by over 200%. So it's definitely having a business impact.
So you know what we need to do, Chip? We need to have them talk to my cable company so that we can have that experience transfer over here into the United States.
You bet.
That'd be great. And so that brings us to your second tip. Get personal.
Get personal. You bet. That customer expectations are really high these days, more so than ever, and they're in the driver's seat. And so our companies like us need to work really hard to earn their loyalty, and so you need to be relevant and credible and personal.
Yes, and one of the things that you've also talked about before is being always on. So maybe you can tell us a little about how you keep it personal across so many different channels at Infor, because you've got to juggle different languages and cultures and still have a coherent brand voice.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, Lisa, especially if you're managing a global marketing team and are in a lot of different regions. So it's a huge challenge, and managing that for brand consistency is not easy. We've always had that challenge at Infor, I'll be honest, and communication's key. Along with having the access to the tools that can do everything from managing your all of your marketing materials that kind of represent this big collage right here, your digital assets, your resources and people, the projects, budgets, tracking your spend and getting creative approvals, and all of the analytics that you need to measure, are you being successful in your business. So we can't just rely on email or the phone anymore. There's way more to it today than that. And this graphic shows many of these moving parts in a marketer's world. We got a lot to assimilate. So how do you make sense of all that? How do you keep visible over that, over your entire marketing operation? How do you get your campaigns to market faster? How do you ensure brand consistency? So these are all challenges that we face.
Yeah, they sure are. Can you show us here on this graphic one or two areas that either are just very nascent or are areas you continually either struggle with or keep testing in hopes to find that holy grail answer?
Yeah, maybe the next slide will kind of help that. So this is how we look at the world within Infor marketing. And so there's a lot of things on here. There's different types of activities that start the engagement and create the initial demand at the top of the funnel. And then there are activities that help do nurturing along the way, taking the buyer through their buyer's journey. So everything from attract them to engage them to nurture them and ultimately convert that into a sale, and then ensure loyalty and happy customers on the back end. So there's a whole variety of inbound activities and outbound activities. The thing that I want to really stress is that at the hub of everything is our corporate website, and that's really where we're driving all of our interactions. Ultimately, it's the destination to really compile all the answers that our target audience needs. So I think that this is I wouldn't say that we're knocking it out of the park in every single area here. There's a lot of things that constantly need evolving and tweaking and tuning, everything from SEO to SEM to making sure that you're accessing the right targets and taking advantage of all of the sources out there for contacts with all of the rich information that surround them.
So is it fair to say, Chip, that the SEO and the SEM areas are a constant learning area that hasn't been completely figured out and codified?
Sure, I think it's a challenge for everybody and something that can continually be improved and modified and tweaked.
Most definitely, most definitely. And I mean, companies like Google and Facebook keep changing the rules. So if any of you listening are using those platforms, then you know that it's hard to stay on top of the changes there in the rules. We're going to talk about another company that deals with these challenges. So tell us more about Wolters Kluwer Health.
Yeah, it's another example of how a company manages all of their marketing resources and campaigns using a marketing resource management system. Wolters Kluwer is a publisher of medical, nursing, and health information. They put that out in many forms like books and journals, loose leaf documents, newsletters, electronic media. And like many publishers, they have a huge amount of custom systems that run their business, none of which, by the way, are terribly helpful for marketers, right? The marketing team has to log in, or previously had to log into 6 different tools to get the marketing information that they needed. So now they use a marketing resource management tool to run their marketing. It helps report on the status of their campaigns. It does a great job of reporting the business results, what kind of return are they getting on their marketing investments. And they're a global company. They've got marketers across U.S. and Europe and Asia. They're always on, no matter what time zone or geography they work in.
Yeah, so you bring up that tip again, always on, be always on. It's something you have to really understand about your customers. And what I like about the Wolters Kluwer story is, first of all, publishers are not well known for being on the cutting edge of marketing technology and customer experience. Having published several books myself, I can tell you several of my publishers no longer exist. So the fact that they did that is very forward thinking. And what's also interesting is that we talked earlier about the messaging maelstrom. And Wolters Kluwer overcame their own internal message maelstrom by implementing this kind of system. So hats off to them.
Yep. So, I guess the tip, be always on. The bottom line is we all need a holistic view of all the moving parts of our marketing campaigns. We need visibility into the campaign information and the resources and the budgets across all channels and touch points.
Yeah, and speaking of touch points on the customer journey, why don't you walk us through some of the key rules or considerations? I know there's a lot here, Chip, but maybe you can give us some high points of what this means.
Yeah, so here's another example of how we do it at Infor. How do you project and map out the behavior of a potential customer? This is a retail industry example. So we found that retailers are particularly interested in automating their omni-channel marketing campaigns. So this is that example. Simon works for a large retailer. He's looking for a marketing resource management tool to help run his campaigns. And so in this flow here, this journey, it starts with him doing online research. He then responds to an online offer. He downloads a white paper. He engages with the sales team at the appropriate time when really on his terms, followed by an online demo. He attended a marketing event for final hands-on information, and then he finally purchased. So this is just an example of charting out the steps that a buyer takes from the buyer's perspective. That's
very helpful, and now we've seen it during the sale. What do we do after the person has made the purchase.
Yeah, so post-purchase is really important, right? So, even after the sale's closed, you need to make sure that customer support and service and all departments, like we talked about, are integrated. So there's a complete picture of how your customer is experiencing your brand. And like we talked about, get them into branded communities, loyalty programs, reference programs, things like that.
They're so important. I want to remind people too, if you've got specific examples or questions you wanted to ask about the customer journey and what platforms are available out there, go to #mycustomerjourney and then stay online, because we're going to have some follow-on ways you can continue to connect with Chip and myself. I want to stress also this nurturing of the post-purchase customer journey can be incredibly rewarding. Another multi-billion-dollar software company, Chip, that I've worked with, they grew their customer community to over 3 million members last year. So they grew it about 7-fold in 3 years. So they put a lot of energy into that, and members of their community, they learned, spend 2.5 times more than customers who are not in their online customer community. So it's just so compelling.
Yeah. So one challenge I know that everybody faces is, okay, so that's great, creating that personal journey seems very one-off. How do you scale that? And there are tools that exist to help you manage all of that. There are visual design tools that help you lay out, drag and drop elements of a given journey. This is kind of an eye strain, but it's a flow chart that basically it's a B2C example where it's a company that captured information from individuals that have used a kiosk for their product or signed up for a loyalty program. So the tool can help flag if they have made a purchase or not. If they have, then it sends a message asking them to follow us on social media. If they have not purchased yet, we could send a discount offer. So there's different paths at different decision points. And the tool also, in real time updates the segment counts at each step, to help optimize those flows. So there are tools out there to help you manage all of that.
Yeah, and those tools are really, they also have to have as part of their foundation an understanding of the personas or the buyer personas, right?
Yeah, you got it. I know there was a question about, how do you choose your customers? There's so many segments, and you have to do your market research and your market intelligence on the things that you sell. And be as specific as possible as you can be with the segments that you're targeting that provide the highest return, have the most people that fit the profile of who would get the most value from what you sell, in what industries and in what titles in the organization, right? So the messaging then that you see here in this example needs to be at the level of a particular buyer's persona, because it's going to be different for different types of people even within the same organization.
And this brings us to tip number 4, which is map to the buyer's journey. Very, very critical.
Yeah, it's really important that you understand each stage of the journey and what the different tactics are at each stage. We shared some examples of that already, but then get a visual framework to represent all of those different touch points, and then use that to understand how the customer interacts with your brand, and do it in a way that's flexible, and you can evolve it and tweak it as behaviors change.
Now, Chip, do you think that these kinds of platforms and maps are only for really large companies, or do you think that these can be useful no matter what size your organization? Well,
I think that any size organization can benefit by this, and here's a lot of the different important components for a modern platform, and there's a few key areas that should be considered. The goal is it's about delivering highly personal experiences, but at scale, and those are kind of opposite concepts. How do you do this? You can do it better by using predictive analytics to help tee up the next content that's relevant. Your platform, by the way, should be very flexible and modular to deploy. It should have good connections to third-party applications. It should also be mobile and collaborative, and something that your marketing team would want to take home and use. So these are just the various, set of the various components that make up an entire engagement platform.
Yeah, I would summarize those two, that they have to be highly personal and at scale. They have to be modular and flexible, and they have to be mobile and collaborative. Are there one or two steps people can take if, because remember we had something like 43% of our participants who said their current journey, understanding, and maps are average. Couple of first steps people can take?
Well, yeah, I think that it's important to tool up, and that I guess brings us to the tip 5, right? So make sure that you are getting access to the tools that can help you with this, and the goal is to make sure that you're connecting your sales efforts with the right prospects at the right time, in the right place, with the right message. The touch points need to be personal and holistic, and you need a framework for managing all of your marketing resources, for managing the people, the processes, the budgets, and the technology. I would say that the very first thing is making sure that you've got the tip number 1, the data at your disposal. It's really a data-driven world, and that's the only way you're going to be able to understand and automate and analyze and draw conclusions about the buyer journey and what's the next likely thing for them to purchase.
Yeah, very key point there. Over the years we've built our CMO communities. One of the pet peeves of our members is, I don't get enough time in front of customers. I get secondhand information from our channel partners or our sales team. I'm going to make more of an effort to get that data directly so we can weave it in to these customer journey maps and deepen our understanding of what our customers go through. So those are 5 powerful tips. Let's summarize and recap these for everyone. We've got just a few minutes left in the webinar. Remember everyone, #MyCustomerJourney if you have any last minute questions. Remember these 5 tips. Think science before art. Innovate and analyze that data to decide where are we going to optimize for the highest yield. Don't just rely on focus groups or just live customer events or just your data. It's a blend of different types of input to develop marketing programs that are really tailored. Number 2, get personal. Chip, you mentioned this earlier, the distinction between personal versus personalized, and it's just not good enough to say, well, we put Mary's name in the email campaign. It just doesn't cut it anymore. Number 3, be always on. So look at places you can streamline tasks and operational efficiencies so you can be consistent, and avoid at all costs emulating the cable company I mentioned earlier. Number 4, map to the buyer's journey. Be prescriptive at each stage of the customer journey. What kind of content or conversation would the buyer or the customer like to have? Because the journey doesn't end once the purchase has been made. And guess what? It might change as well. And finally, tool up. So find technology that can really help you be smarter about what your customer wants, that you're connecting with them at the right time and the right place, and that you're integrating those touch points to create that, what Chip mentioned earlier, a holistic experience across the whole journey. We've had some really great conversation today, Chip. I'm hoping that people continue the conversation with us after today's webinar using this hashtag.
Absolutely, and I also want to just offer up. My favorite thing in the world is to talk marketing to marketers and have that peer-to-peer conversation. So honestly, if there's anything that you want to noodle around, or this is how I end up learning is just by having that broader conversation with marketers. So please contact me. I hope that we shared some good real-world examples of how companies out there are doing this. Some are out there in the market. Some of them are current Infor customers, and then some of these are truly how we just run things within the Infor marketing enterprise. So please contact me at this email to keep the conversation going.
Most definitely. I also want to remind people here on our next slide that we're going to keep the conversation going. We're going to provide you with additional resources for you to either get started on your customer journey transformation, or to take, for those of you that have average journey maps and experiences from that poll, to take another 1%, take something from this call today and really improve what you already have. And that's our goal. So check out these 2 links that we have from both Infor, and if you also go to my website and /AMA bonus, you can download some additional videos. You can download the messaging maelstrom and share that with your team next time you have a marketing meeting or a retreat, just so you can, again, really understand the experiences your customers are having and how you can improve their condition. So make sure you take advantage of these free bonuses and keep the conversation going with us as well. Chip, you've been a member of our CMO community for 4 years, and this just proves that you're always continually learning, and it's just been a delight to collaborate with you on this journey.
Thanks a lot, Lisa. Same right back at you.
This is Lisa, and wishing you all a great customer journey. Remember, it starts with 1 step. We hope you found this valuable today. All the best.
Thank you, everyone.
And thank you so much, Chip and Lisa, for all of this great information and your insight. Just as a reminder, AMA members can view an archive of this webcast at any time by visiting ama.org/webcast. Please also take a moment to complete the post-webcast survey. Let us know what you thought of today's webcast and also what topics you want to see presented on future webcasts. We really appreciate your feedback. I want to thank our generous sponsor, Infor, again. Thank you so much, as well as ReadyTalk, who provided us with a web conferencing platform for today's webcast. If you'd like to learn more about ReadyTalk and their services, please feel free to visit readytalk.com/AMA. And lastly, I want to thank our great audience. Thank you so much for your time and your participation. And that does end our presentation for today. So thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day.